So these are my arched bale makers. You can see the sizes of the arches here. We've got a 3mm, a 4mm, a 5mm and a 6mm. They come sold in a set. You can either buy the whole lot, or when you buy a set it will have the format and the strip cutter. You can also see if you buy the whole set, you've got a 3 written on there. That's because this one's a 3mm, and you actually have the size of the cutter. This one's a 9mm by 3mm. All my strips are cut to 3mm thick. I like that thickness. You could cut out a strip and halve the size or trim a bit off if you wanted a thinner arch. What you do is you cut your strip and obviously it dries over the former. So what I want to point out is your millimetre width is from that side to that side, and that's the same on all of them. So they're all set up in the same way. And what these little legs do is allow the strip to be caught so it doesn't open back out. So you can see here the 3mm I've used with the 3 cards thick rolling frame, and the other ones have the 4 cards thick. The width from there to there does allow for 1mm of clay, so even the 3 can be used with a rolling frame number 4 or 1mm slats. So let's get on and look at how we actually do the process. What you need to make your arched bales is a roller, your thickness guides. I use either a 4 or a 3, that's 1mm thick clay, 4 playing cards, or 3 playing cards, 0.7 or around 0.75 depending on what frames or slats you're using. So I've got a 3 and a 4. I've got obviously my formers, my cutters. I've got a little bit of foam. You'll understand about that in a bit. And I actually have a metal kidney, and that is to help me get these little cut pieces off the work surface, because they can be a bit tricky, especially when the clay's very squidgy. So that's what you need to get yourself started. I like to roll in a plastic folder. So a good trick that Wannery Tanner taught me, a good decade or 2 ago. I like Cool Slip as my release agent. You do have to put a tiny bit on the inside of the bag so the clay doesn't stick. It doesn't need much. The spray was probably a little generous, but we'll just wipe a little bit off, just so my clay is not going to stick inside. The clay I'm using is not fresh out of the pack. It has been opened for another project. It is fairly new though, so it's still very moist. It's not drying out at all. If your clay is old and getting a bit dry, you will struggle to cut arches. I'm just going to use a tiny bit because it's very warm here today, and this clay is going to dry out quite quickly. You can roll out multiple if you want to, but for this demo, I'm just going to... Now, I'm going to roll a lot. I really want this down to an even thickness. So I'm doing the 1mm thick. First thing I'm going to do is just double check. Yes, it does release off here. I'm going to grab my number 4 because the smaller ones are a little bit trickier to do than the bigger ones. So I've got my 10mm cutter. I'm just going to try and put a tiny bit of Cool Slip down without getting too much on. There we go. Dip my cutter in. You don't need much. I'm going to take the middle out, and what you will find is 99% of the time the clay stays in the cutter, but do not panic, because we have a very nifty, I've just folded away my extra clay, we have a very nifty piece of rough foam, and you will get a little strip of foam and you just push it straight out. It comes out really easily. So the kidney comes in to help you pick this up, because it's actually the hardest thing is to get it up off the surface. No release agent or anything on here. And what we do is place it in one side, roll it over, gently curve it, and drop it into the other side. As I said, the smaller ones are a bit trickier than the other ones. If you've got a paintbrush will help you just to tuck that other end in. Sometimes it just doesn't want to tuck in, so just gently with a paintbrush tuck it in. And there we see, that's how quick I've done it. So the first check is from ahead over the top. You want to make sure it's straight. I'll wiggle it. So sometimes they can go in a little bit like that. So then you're going to end up with a bale that's got a slant to it. So if yours does that, just come in and whether you do it with your finger or with a paintbrush, if that is more comfortable, make sure it's sitting level straight across. And then the other check is make sure it's even here, because the more time you spend now, tweak it to make sure it's even, the less sanding you're going to have to do. Because if you make an arch and say you've gone like that, hopefully the camera's picking that up, then when you take it off, you're actually going to have to sand it because those two ends are not going to be level. If you make sure that it's sitting level, then that's pretty much going to be ready to use without any cleanup whatsoever. Now that just sits in the open air. It cannot go on a hot plate, in a dehydrator or anything. These are made out of 3D printed plastic, so they cannot take any heat. So they do just need to dry in the air. Let's do another one. Let's do one of the bigger ones, because you'll see that the bigger ones are a little bit easier to do. I'm still using a tiny amount of clay. The size 5 is the 13 by 3mm cutter. And we've got just enough clay to cut that out. It's definitely going to stick in. Put my clay away. My little bit of foam. That one was about to drop out anyway. Pick them up again with this. And then let's go in the other side. So again, drop that in one side, roll it around and tuck it in. Oh, this one doesn't want to tuck in either. There we go. And there we go. I have a habit of making them on the end. It actually doesn't matter. You could make it, you could put it in the middle. You could now make 4 more and stack them up, which is what I actually do because they store really easily. Again, I've done my check, level, straight, not wiggly. And then I could stack more up if I wanted to. And that is it. You would then leave them to dry.